Okay, so today we're diving into something really personal.
Yeah.
It's called Pasted Text, and it's this incredibly powerful story about, well, an emotional experience, a really intense one, actually, that happened during a journey. And what we're going to do today is kind of unpack that for you, not just the what happened, but what it shows us about this link between letting yourself feel your emotions and actually finding true happiness.
Yeah, I mean it's a glimpse into a really human moment,
Yeah.
And I think if we kind of zoom in on the details here, maybe we can pull out some insights that you listening can connect with in your own life, your own experiences. It's about the author's feelings, yeah, but also what those feelings might mean for you.
So, all right, picture this. You're biking downhill in northwestern Spain.
Yeah.
You start at this place called Alto del Perdón, and you're heading toward Puente de la Reina in Navarre. Imagine that, right? The wind in your hair flying down the hill. And then you get to Puente de la Reina, which the author describes as this incredibly beautiful place. Like it really means something to them.
It's such a vivid scene, isn't it? All that energy from the bike ride, and then suddenly this tranquility and beauty of Puente de la Reina. It's almost like the outside world is setting the stage for some kind of internal shift for the author.
And then, boom, something totally unexpected happens.
Hmm.
Just as they're parking their bike after this amazing ride, the bike jerks and their head slams into a wall. Ouch. Right. But here's the thing, and this is really heartwarming. Some local people rush over to help. There's an older man from Seville and his wife and a friend, and they're so kind. They offer water and just stay with the author for like 15 minutes. Just being there, simple but so powerful.
Yeah, that immediate response from complete strangers, it really says something. I mean, think about it. The author is vulnerable after the accident, and these people just show up with empathy and support. It makes you think about those small moments of connection, how much they can matter.
And then, get this, the story takes this really interesting turn. The older man starts insisting that the author should go into the church. Now, understandably, the author's first thought is like, wait, is this guy trying to steal my bike? They're a little suspicious, so they say no at first. But the man, he doesn't give up. He asks again, he even takes their hand and gently tries to guide them towards the church. You can almost feel this shift happening from suspicion to like a hesitant kind of openness.
It's fascinating how persistent he is, right? What do you think was driving him? Was it that sense of community? Or maybe he just sensed intuitively that the author needed something more than just, physical help after falling. I think we've all felt that wariness around strangers, like the author did. But then the invitation, it just keeps coming and it starts to break down those walls.
So they go into the church and the author instantly feels this great energy. It's a really strong feeling, but it doesn't last long because they're still worried about the bike, so
Yeah.
they head back up pretty quickly.
That immediate feeling, that energy, it's powerful, right? Have you ever walked into a place and felt something like that? I think certain places, especially ones that have history or spiritual significance, they can really evoke strong emotions in us. And the fact that the author leaves so quickly because they're worried about their bike, it shows how those everyday anxieties can kind of overshadow those deeper experiences.
But here's the turning point, I think. As the author's leaving, the local man asks his wife and her friend to watch the bike. What do you think? Wouldn't you say that's a key moment? The author even says they told themselves to relax, that no one's going to steal. It's like a decision, a conscious one, to trust these strangers, to let go a little and be vulnerable.
Oh, absolutely. It's huge. They're handing over something valuable to people they've just met, and that takes a lot of letting go. It's vulnerability on both sides, right? The locals offered help, and now the author's trusting them. It makes you think about how quickly that connection, that trust can build.
So, feeling a bit calmer now, the author goes back into the church and prays. And here's where we get a little more insight into their background. They identify as Druze, which is a monotheistic faith, and they have this philosophy about finding God everywhere. They say, if you take me to a church, I will pray. If you take me to a mosque, I will pray. If you take me to a synagogue or Buddhist temple, I will pray. I believe God is in everything. It's pretty open-minded, don't you think?
It is, and it really explains why they felt okay praying in a Christian church, right? It wasn't about following a specific religion at that moment, but about connecting with something bigger than themselves in that particular space. The candles, the quiet atmosphere, maybe even the religious images, I think it all contributed to that feeling.
And then while praying, something really profound happens. The author says they can't fully describe it, but it was like surreal and, I dare say, even supernatural. They felt this urge to kneel, almost like a voice inside saying, go on your knees, child, go on your knees, you need this. And that's when the emotions just come pouring out.
That feeling, being pulled to kneel, it suggests a really deep need, maybe even something subconscious. The author mentions it had been years since they'd really let themselves feel and express any strong emotions. Think about that, holding everything in for years. It's like that moment in the church gave them permission, or maybe it was the trigger, for it all to finally come out.
They describe it as an emotional waterfall.
Mm.
It's this huge rush of feelings, inside and out, that they couldn't hold back anymore. They were totally overwhelmed, and they cried. And they cried for a whole hour. Can you believe that? An hour straight.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing that finally stopped them was thinking about the woman waiting outside with their bike.
Wow, emotional waterfall. That really paints a picture, doesn't it? It's so sudden and intense, and the fact that it lasted for a solid hour shows how much they must have been holding in. It's like our minds and bodies can store up years of unexpressed feelings just waiting for the right moment to release them.
And even after leaving the church, trying to man up and wipe away the tears, it wasn't over. When the locals gave the bike back and hugged them, they started crying again, right there on the street, for another 3 hours. People came up and hugged them, and the crying just kept going. That's a long time to be crying, really intense. What does that say about what they were going through?
It's incredible, isn't it? Even after the prayer, the tears kept coming. It seems like something really deep had been unlocked, and the hug from the locals, I think that gave them even more reassurance, a sense of safety, and allowed them to just keep letting those feelings out. It shows how important support and validation from others can be in helping us process our emotions.
The author says they felt completely different after those few hours, like weight of the world had been lifted off their shoulders. They felt wonder, comfort, the certainty that everything was going to be okay, even though they didn't know what the future held. That sounds like a life-changing experience. Have you ever felt that kind of release and then that amazing sense of peace?
Yeah, that feeling of lightness after such a heavy emotional release, it's really powerful. It speaks to the burden we carry when we keep our emotions bottled up. By finally letting themselves feel everything, it's like they shed a huge weight, emotionally, and maybe even physically.
And this leads right into their main takeaway, which is rejecting what they call macho bullshit, the whole idea that real men don't cry. They didn't care who saw them crying. They were just being themselves. They felt truly human, real, and they made a decision to never lose that feeling again.
It's so important, especially with all the pressure men face to hide their vulnerability. The author chose to reject that harmful idea and embrace their emotions. That's real self-acceptance and a huge part of why this experience was so transformative. It makes you think about all the messages we get about how we're supposed to express our emotions, doesn't it?
And from this experience, they offer this really straightforward message that I think hits home for a lot of people. Let your feelings speak. Don't suppress them. They are the route to true happiness. They even say, laugh, cry, and love as much as you can, never hold back. It's like a call to embrace every emotion, the whole range.
It's a simple message, but so hard to actually live by, right? We live in a world that often values stoicism, keeping your emotions under wraps. And this story is such a powerful example of what can happen when we bottle things up and the incredible freedom that comes with letting ourselves truly feel.
So as you're listening to this, think about your own relationship with your emotions. Are there feelings you tend to push down, ignore, or judge yourself for having? What would it be like to let those feelings come up, to really let them speak, like the author says? This story, this journey, it shows us what's possible when we give ourselves permission to do that.
What's really striking to me is how all these different things came together to create the perfect conditions for this huge emotional release. The vulnerability after the accident, the kindness of strangers, the unexpected invitation to a sacred space, the author's openness to spirituality, and then finally that outpouring of emotion. Like all these elements aligned perfectly to make this transformation possible. What stands out to you the most about all that?
Yeah, I just feel like this unique intersection of events, right? The beauty and maybe even the spiritual energy of the place, the unexpected kindness and trust from people they didn't know, and the author's willingness to go into that church despite their initial hesitation. It all created this safe space for this deep emotional release to happen. And the impact it had on them is undeniable.
And if we step back for a second, this isn't just about one person's experience in Spain. It's about a basic human need to deal with and express our emotions in a healthy way. Pushing our feelings down doesn't make them go away. It usually just stores them up and creates this weight that can affect our well-being, sometimes without us even realizing it.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, we've explored this incredibly powerful story that shows the deep connection between expressing your emotions and your overall happiness. The author's journey in Puente de la Reina wasn't just physical, it was deeply emotional, and led to this profound realization. Letting yourself feel, to laugh, to cry, to experience all your emotions fully, that's not weakness. It's actually the key to real happiness.
And this brings us to a really important question for you to think about. What could change in your life if you allowed your feelings to speak more freely? Think about any burdens you might be carrying, any emotions you're holding back, consciously or unconsciously. This story invites you to explore what it would be like to live more authentically, maybe even more lightly, by embracing your emotional world.
It's a powerful reminder that your emotions are a part of you, and instead of trying to control them or pretend they're not there, engaging with them fully can lead to incredible shifts in your inner peace and well-being. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive today. We hope this personal story gives you a new perspective as you continue your own journey of learning and self-discovery.